Hi there. Welcome back to the Generalist Pastor Podcast. Here we're in the middle of a study on the Gospel of John. We finished up chapter 6, the fascinating and fantastic passage where Jesus really lays out his who he is in terms of bread and blood. Though it's not explicitly a Lord's Supper passage, it's hard to miss what Jesus is doing there. Today we begin chapter 7, and I think there may be a few details that, well, maybe you haven't seen before. So let's dive into the text. We begin here that after this, that is after chapter 6, after that discussion, Jesus went about in Galilee. We remember that he has been up by the Sea of Galilee, been on one side, that's where he fed the 5,000, and then he walked over himself to the other side, right? Well, jumped into a boat eventually. And that's where he had the discussion of John 6, is on the near side, the Judean side of the Sea of Galilee. And so he was going about in Galilee. He would not go into Judea. That's the southern part of the kind of Jewish area of the Roman Empire, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Why are they seeking to kill him? They're seeking to kill him because of the signs that he's doing, because he has cleansed the temple. And with that cleansing of the temple in John 2, Jesus really is disliked. Who would have thought that yelling at the religious leaders, upsetting the apple cart, so to speak, of the practices of the day, would make you persona non grata? But it has. And so Jesus is not about to go into Judea. Now, part of the reason for this, obviously he knows the Jews are seeking to kill him. We say, well, why not go? You're supposed to be crucified, right? Die for the sins of the world. Why not just go and get it over with? Why sit around? Well, his time has not yet come, we'll see. Jesus has a ministry in which he must fulfill the law, and where he must fulfill and bring about clear testimony, the fulfillment of the prophets, as to who he is as Messiah. And so he is actively doing those things. We don't know the fullness of, let's say, a divine checklist of things Jesus had to do before he could be crucified, but it seems like Jesus certainly does, and they have not all been checked yet. And so he refuses to go to Judea at this time. This will be important in a moment. Verse 2. Now the Jews' Feast of Booths was at hand. The Feast of Booths is a historic feast of God's people. This is also called the Feast of Tabernacles. The goal here, or the point here, is that the people spend a couple of days in makeshift homes. They take branches and they create little buildings from them with roofs and all sorts of things. And they live in them to a point, but they live in them in order to remember what God had done. That's an important thing. We don't think enough about what God has done for us and to bring us to where we are. We typically think about simply where we are and maybe where we want to go, but we often lose sight of the past. And it's in knowing the past and God's activities there that give us a foundation so that we might hope and trust in what will be, because we know what was. Hopefully that makes some sense. For the Jews of the day, for Jesus, the people of Jesus' day, they are looking backward to the time when they were in Exodus, when they were in Egypt, in slavery, and God brought them out, and they spent 40 years in the desert. Now, having received the promised land, they remember the time where they were wandering, waiting for that permanent home, as they build these temporary houses. Christians, too, as St. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, have the same experience. For now we dwell in this tent, right, the body, and the Lord is preparing an even more permanent home in the resurrection. The body will be made pure, holy, incorruptible, undefiled. And so we remember what God has done for us, our baptism, the work of Christ for us, as we hope for and live in light of the hope we have of the resurrection. So there's some themes we want to draw on today. Now his brothers said to him, that is, Jesus' brothers said to him, leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples may also see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he wants to be known openly, and if you do these things, show yourself to the world. For not even his brothers believed in him. Now we read this whole section here because we need that last line. For not even his brothers believed in him. Now, there's obviously historic argumentation that has been written on and commented on across YouTube and the world as to are these brothers of Jesus? Are they half brothers of Jesus, that is from Mary? Are these sons of Joseph from a first marriage? Are these cousins? Because adelphoi, the word for brother in Greek, can have a larger semantic meaning than just the paternal or fraternal idea. Not fraternal. Fraternal means friend. Paternal is father, or maternal means mother. Anyway, with that, we don't know. Our Lutheran confessions state that Mary was a virgin her whole life. And she was semper virgo, always virgin. Now you can debate whether or not you agree with that confession of the Lutheran Church, but it would be a strange thing to just make up. There are many things that people do just make up, so it's not really a great argument to say, well, who would make that up and believe it? But there are people who've made up a flying spaghetti monster and believe that that is the Lord. So, don't put anything past people. That said, these are relatives of Jesus. And let's just leave it at that for now. These relatives of Jesus, who know that there are people trying to kill him in Judea, who do not believe in him, say, after he has done this miracle of feeding the 5,000, after he has said, you must eat of my body and drink of my blood, or you will not have life will not have life in you. They say, great, go away, go to Judea. That is to say, I hope you die. I hope you die. I wish you were dead. Get out of here. I hope the Lord kills you. Seems like a normal family get-together, right? Obviously no tensions there, no issues there. Obviously jesting here. The brothers being this forward in their language, they are not just encouraging him to go and be Messiah, but they don't believe that he is Messiah, and so they believe that he should receive the consequences for claiming to be. Just as people walked away because of what he said, this is the hard saying, who can follow it, as they said in the previous chapter. Here the brothers say, great, if you're going to make this move, then go and do it. Because either you are or you aren't. And they didn't think he was, so they're guessing that just like Joseph's brothers, maybe we can take him out and he'll be gone. And we can get back to doing what we were doing. All right. Now, why is it they say that your disciples also may see the works you are doing? This is strange because the apostles, they are with Jesus, and so don't make the mistake that the brothers here are speaking of the apostles, because they've seen Jesus do the wonders that he's done, the miracles and the signs that he has performed. They had been there for that. Here, disciples is a broader term. And so, just as many had left him in the northern area, the brothers of Jesus are making jest here that, well, why don't you go south and see those people who love you so much? They know perfectly well there are not many disciples in the south. They know perfectly well that those in the south are trying to kill him. And so they are really stabbing and twisting the knife of those who have left Jesus. And it seems very few now are following him. Again, they get off trying to prove themselves, not that they are simply being snarky, but if you're going to make the claim, you got to do the work. That's their argument, ultimately. Now let's see how Jesus responds in verse 6 here. Jesus says, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here." Imagine what Jesus sounds like as he says these words. Is this Jesus speaking softly? Is he speaking with a harsh tone, a hard edge? Is he laughing? Is he crying? When Jesus said to them, "My time is not yet come, but your time is always here," the world cannot hate you because it hates me, because I testify about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet fully come. And after saying this, he remained in Galilee. Now, here, Jesus certainly is making no bones with his brothers about, I'm not backing down from my claim. But as we started our discussion, this is not a time, not the time for Jesus to go and to be crucified. He has not yet finished all of his signs. He has not yet finished showing the fullness of his Messiahship. He needs to do that first, and then he will go down to Jerusalem. Then he will suffer and die. Jesus will say in other places that the world will hate you because it hated me first. Here Jesus says, why does it hate him? Because its works are evil. And he is saying, you can't do what the world wants you to do. You have to do what God has desired. And this is what God desires. And he gives that new teaching that is to follow him, to eat his body and drink his blood. That is to see that Christ is the New Testament, the new covenant, the Lamb, the Passover Lamb, pure and spotless, who will be have his blood shed for the sins of the world. Again, his brothers cannot see this. They do not understand this. They don't believe it. And so Jesus says, look, the world doesn't hate you. Go be faithful. That's an important thing here. Jesus doesn't just dismiss the brothers out of hand. He doesn't just tell them, go away, you're annoying. But rather he invites them to be faithful. You go to the feast. It is the time of the feast. You need to be faithful. Go down. Jesus here stays away. This is not a mandatory feast. You don't have to go to Jerusalem, but he prepares and will probably do this in a different way, not by going to Jerusalem, but probably by building a little house or tabernacle where he is in Galilee. So he encourages the brothers to do this. And after saying this, he remained in Galilee. Now, I do want to say this, that the brothers of Jesus do seem to come to faith. Even though now they do not believe, just like in the Old Testament with the brothers of Joseph, they come to understand that God had a plan. And they come to believe that what Joseph saw in his dreams was God's will and God working, even though they didn't like it. The book of James is written by Jesus' half-brother, well, again, whether a son of Joseph or a son of Joseph and Mary, we are historically unsure. Theologically, in the Confession of the Church, it is half-brother of Jesus by means of Joseph. But he becomes the early patriarch of the church. The first leader of the church is a relative of Jesus, one of these brothers who says, why don't you just get it over with and die? He is now one who will give up his own life for the confession that, yes, Jesus actually is the Christ, a wonderful, wonderful image and story for us to hold on to as it shows us the redemption, the depth of the redemption of God. All right, verse 10. Now after this, but after his brothers had gone up to the feast, he then also went up, not publicly, but in private. Interesting note here, right? So his brothers go down. Now his brothers who were trying to force the issue, his brothers who were trying to get him killed, they go down and they bear witness that he said he was going to remain in Galilee. So he has used his brothers to his own end. He has used his brothers in order to provide cover. because they've obviously gone down. People know that they are related to Jesus, and they, I'm sure, had to deal with all manner of people saying, well, where is the guy? Let's get him. Why couldn't you get him down here? No, he stayed back in Galilee. He didn't come down with us. Punk. You wouldn't believe the stuff he was saying up there, and so on and so forth. The complaining and the kibitzing and all the rest happen. But then we see here at the second half of verse 10 that Jesus goes down, not publicly, but in private. So not with big fanfare, certainly not with many of the disciples, because if you've got one person, you might be able to sneak around. Two people, okay. Three, starting to get a little bit more. 13 guys showing up. That's a little bit of a bigger ask. But he goes down privately again to worship his Father, to be faithful. Even though it's not a mandatory feast that you have to attend here, he attends nevertheless, because it's the house of his Father, and he wishes to worship our Lord. So verse 11, the Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, where is he? And there was much muttering about him among the people. Now, while some said, he's a good man, others say, no, he's leading the people astray. For yet the fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him. So again, brothers go down, they're bad-mouthing him. Friends are there, right, who receive them. Others are talking about some of the miracles and things. And they're all just talking in hushed tones. Nobody can agree on Jesus. Some people think, well, he's doing great things. He's healing. My cousin, he was, possessed by a demon. Jesus cast it out. He can't be all bad. Another person, oh yeah, my sister-in-law, she got healed from fever. My nephew on my sister's side, he was saved from leprosy, right? It can't be all bad. And others say, no. You hear what he's actually saying, though? Like, he's saying he's God. He's saying you got to eat him. You got to drink him. And that he's this new covenant. He's saying he's greater than Moses. It's not okay. But all of this, right? Nobody has any firmness of a position. Nobody is willing to kind of talk openly. That is, to stand publicly and support one side or another. All of these conversations are happening in private. They're happening either behind closed doors or with hushed tones. It says, for fear of the Jews, no one spoke of him openly. What does that mean? Well, they're all Jews, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean that they're fearing of each other, but they're fearing the chief priests. They're fearing the political powers of the day and the religious powers of the day. Because the Pharisees and then also the Sadducees and the rulers of the temple are obviously and openly opposed to Jesus, and so to take a position on one side or the other makes you a target by them, and nobody wants to be a target. This is similar to what we've seen across history, that when various powers rise, if there is not protections under the law for open speech, there tends to be the use of power to eliminate speech. And you can see this, whether you think it's happening here in America. It certainly might be. We've seen it happen, I think, in some of the online discourse. But we also see it in real time in the various countries, particularly in the Middle East, in places where there are no lawful protections for free speech. And so might makes right. And power is used to limit discussion and limit protest and indeed just limit conversation. So that's where these folks are. They are afraid of the religious leaders because if they are on the wrong side of them, they get kicked out of the temple. You get kicked out of the temple, you can't offer sacrifices. You can't offer sacrifices, you remain in your sin, and you go to hell. And that's a powerful stick indeed. From this, we certainly want to encourage the church always not to use the gospel of, not to withhold the gospel of Christ from those who are repentant. We do not use the forgiveness of sins as a stick in order to beat or cajole people to our side, but rather we give it freely, just as Christ has given it freely for us. Okay, that's going to be our time for today. Thank you so much for being with us in this weekly study of the Gospel of John. We'll pick up in verse 14 next week as Jesus reveals himself in the temple. Bye-bye.